Welcome to In Our Neighborhood, στη γειτονιά μας, with John Yiannopoulos, Taxiarchis Delis and Thodoris Makris, and myself, Panagiotis Diamandis from Sydney. The other three are all in Athens. And we're here to talk about, amongst other things, child removal, forced child removal as an act of genocide. Before I start, I will let the others say a brief greeting, and we'll move on.
Hello, I'm John. Welcome to our neighbor.
Welcome, Panagiotis.
Welcome, I'm Theodore.
Panagiotis,
Thank you.
Panagiotis, it's all yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the neighborhood, to speak to all our virtual digital neighborhood around the world now about this very dark material that we're going to be talking about over the next 10, 11 minutes or so. Look, as we know, genocide is a crime under international law, and many jurisdictions have absorbed it into domestic law as well. There are 5 acts which, when committed with intent to destroy, to use the definition in law, used by the International Criminal Court in The Hague in the Netherlands. 5 acts which committed with intent to destroy constitute genocide. The first 4 are to do with the destruction of life in various means, outright murder and other deprivation of the necessities for life. The 5th one is what interests us today, which is the forced removal of children from one group to another. Now, this constitutes genocide according to the chief author of the convention, Dr. Raphael Lemkin, born in what was then Poland, today it's Ukraine, to a Jewish family, studied in Germany and spent much of his life in the United States. So quite, just like us, quite diverse, quite traveled and multicultural. He had studied the phenomenon of forced child removal across many cultures and many generations. And in his papers, there is an entire section of his personal papers about the forced child removal of Greeks, Hellenes, as I prefer to use the term. As far back as the 14th century, this was the official policy of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. The forced child removal of underage children, particularly boys, but also girls. It was a tax. The practice was known as the devshirme, or the collecting, the gathering. The children were assembled in the regional capital, were classified, were examined. The more physically attractive ones ended up in the harems of local lords, and if you were particularly beautiful, you went all the way to the Sultan's palace as a gift from the local governor. Most of the boys ended up in the military, where they formed what was known as the Janissary Corps. Janissary, of course, is an English corruption of the Turkish phrase Yeni Tseri, which literally means new troops. They were not Muslim born, therefore they were second class within the within the Ottoman Turkish military, and were treated as such. They became the frontline forces, the cannon fodder, but they quickly developed into the shock troops, because only the strongest and the smartest ones survived. Very quickly, they developed into the frontline forces of the Ottoman Empire. And this official government practice of child removal lasted for something like 5 centuries, until the middle of the 1800s, which is when it was formally abolished after a revolt by the Janissary Corps, what was left of it, against the modernization of the military.
Panagiotis.
So when
this was also happening in some territories, in many territories in Greece also.
Many places inside what we now call Greece, definitely. So this was not just a tax that was done during peacetime. This was particularly a tax. This was also part of their destruction of revolts. So as we know, with the rise of nationalism in the 1700s, particularly after the French Revolution, the Ottoman Empire would deal with revolt by destroying the entire region, killing everyone within a particular region, but they would not kill the children underage. not for any other reason, but for a very practical reason. These children would be Turkified, Islamized, and be used to reinforce the Muslim population of the region at the expense of the Christian population of the region. This particularly happened in the 1820s, in 1810s in Serbia, and in 1820s in Greece. On the islands, the worst cases are the islands of Chios, Psara, and Samos in the 1820s, the port city of Messaloniki, where famously Lord Byron died during the siege. At the end of the siege, whatever children were left alive were taken away, and the ones who survived became Muslims, became Turks. And the case of, and other cases, and this is where we get in the 1820s of cases like Suli, near my own hometown in outside Yanina, or Nausa, where the mothers preferred to die along with their children, threw themselves off cliffs in both cases, rather than their children be taken and raised by others and lose their identity as Christians and as Hellenes. This continued, although the official practice was abolished in the Ottoman Empire, this continued right through the genocide period of 1914, 1924. This continues right through to the present day, particularly with the Assyrian families living in the Tur Abdin region, in rural areas where, because they're Christians, they don't have to pay a bridal dowry, prika. They don't have to pay it. So it's cheap to just grab a Christian girl and marry her off to a Muslim boy and be done with it. There's no dowry involved. But other empires, other people saw this and they liked it as a practice of demographic, of social control. The one that most effectively utilized it was the British Empire. Particularly, most effectively used it in Australia, where they almost succeeded in completely eliminating the Aboriginal population, the indigenous people of Australia. And beyond the massacres and the poisonings and the other atrocities that went on, the most damage was done, in fact, by the forced removal of Aboriginal children, which started in Victoria in the 1810s, in the then colony, later state of Victoria in the 1810s, and was not formally abolished until 1986. Yes, I said 1986, which is well within my lifetime. I was a teenager at the time. With the closure of the Cootamundra home here in New South Wales. This is when it formally ended as a practice, as government policy. This started off as British government policy. It was also implemented in New Zealand. It was also done in Canada and in the United States. It was most effective, though, in destroying the indigenous population here in Australia. And it was acknowledged, and this is again where Australia is unique, one of a handful, where the Australian government, the federal government, under then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, made a formal apology on the floor of the House of Parliament, formal apology to the native peoples, the First Nations of Australia. We apologise for the stolen generations, as the child removal is known in Australia, but don't ask for compensation. We apologise, we're sorry we did it, but don't ask us for money as compensation. The sorry is all you get. Later on, we'll see, as time goes on, there is more pressure for compensation, but we'll see where it goes. And this is why I believe, and this is why in all my writings and all my teaching, what I try to show is that genocide is an international phenomenon. Jews were not the only victims, Armenians were not the only victims, Greeks were not the only victims. When we take away their national names, we see these patterns all around the world, the same practices, different time, different geographic place, different victim, different perpetrator, but the practice is the same. The target is we destroy a group we don't like. We have a social problem. We don't like a particular minority group. We don't like a particular population. And we apply biological solutions to that problem. This is genocide. And biological solution, I mean, you'd go to the extreme of the Nazis, which is killing everybody we don't like. or what the Ottoman Empire did and what the British Empire did, which is we attempt to assimilate everyone we do like, make them like us. If they look like us, if they don't look enough like us, we kill them.
This is horrible. They are criminals.
It is criminal. It was criminal activity. And this is, I mean, you know, as a father, I cannot imagine what it would be like.
Yeah.
So this is why today, coming out of the Black Lives Matter movement, we are getting movements, particularly in the United States and in Great Britain, to tear down. And it's happened in Bristol, it's happened in Connecticut, in Washington, the statues of people associated with the slave trade in the 1700s, the 1800s. People associated, even great benefactors, they donated much money to build museums and cathedrals and great palaces. Their statues are being attacked and torn down. Christopher Columbus is one of them. Not really his fault, but he's copying it as well. Where these statues are being destroyed because they represent people associated with this forced removal of children, with genocide of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. I'm one of those that disagrees with this, but it's for another time. We shouldn't destroy history, even when we disagree with it. We must learn from it, because this is the only way, only by doing what we are doing right now. Here in our
I agree with you 100%.
Only with this conversation, John, and others who watch this, we study from the past. We learn from the past. We don't try and hide it. These things happen. And just like Kevin Rudd did, and Kevin Rudd paid a great political price for it, it was not a popular decision here. 10 years later, 12 years later, now that we're coming up to the 13th anniversary. And I'm glad that the Federation of Pondian Associations of Australia did a formal media release on Sorry Day in May, that we understand your pain because we've been through it. This is how we build links. This is how we build relationships. And this is how we stop genocide. This is how we make genocide something that is history, not politics. It should belong to the past, but it doesn't. Enough from me for one session, I believe. Enough preaching from the pulpit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing with us and all your knowledge. We're gonna see you often here in our neighbor.
Whenever we can make it, I'm sure I'll find the time.
Okay. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, and share this video. Bye.